Hey everyone, and welcome to the next tutorial. In this one, we're actually going to get the scoring system to work. So if you pull the game up, in the bottom right-hand corner of the HUD, I'm actually going to have every time you hit an enemy, it'll put some points down there. So let's go ahead and get started on it. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make a new object, as always, and call it score. We're going to import PyGame and import constants as C. Just like pretty much everything we've made so far. Now this will be a sprite in itself, because essentially what we're doing is we're using the font module that comes with PyGame, and whatever text we pass into it, it's gonna render a surface based off what text we put into it. So essentially the text is just an image, it's a sprite, but we can use the font module that comes with PyGame to kind of pass text in and generate an image based on the text. So I'll show you how it works. So our class is called score, and we're going to import from the sprite class. Run our constructor and run the super method. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we actually need to, for some reason, this is one of the modules in PyGame you have to initialize. Other ones you don't, but this one you do. So we got to do pygame.font.initialize. And actually, I don't want to put that there. Let's do that in the main, because I want it to initialize everything like right when the game starts. So right where we do all our initializing, I'm going to do pygame.font.init, because we're using the font module. Let's go back to score. So we're going to have a variable called value, which is going to contain the current score value. We also need to make a font object. So the way we do that is we go to the PyGame font module, and there's a font object in there, and it actually takes two parameters. The font, the first one, is what font do you want to use, and you can actually pass in the file path to any font you have installed on your computer. If you pass in none, there's a default Python font, which is what I'm going to use because I'm not really worried about it. It looks fine for what we're doing, but if you wanted to use whatever font you wanted, you would just type in the file path right there. The next is what size you want it, and depending on the font you're using, this number can, like, you can do 20 and it be huge, or you can do 20 and it'll be small. It just depends on the font you're using. I'm just going to do 20 for now. Or actually, let's do this. Let's make a variable called font size and set it to 20, and then pass that in there. Because you might have something later on in your game where, like, the font, like, every time the score goes up, it kind of gets big for a second and shrinks back down, like it animates. So you could, like, write a function in here that adjusts the font size or something. So the next thing we're going to do is self.image equals self. This self.font is just the font object. It's not the actual image on the screen. It's just what holds, like, the actual font we're going to use. Because it's a sprite, we still have to have self.image. So the way you generate an image based off, like, text, you access that font object we created up here, and it has a method called render. And all you do is pass in what you want it to render. So we're wanting it to render this value up here. So the way I'm going to do that, I'm actually going to type in string, because we've got to convert this to a string, because right now it's an integer. I'm going to make it a format string. And it's going to say the word score. And we're going to pass in self.value to it. So that'll write our score. Then it wants some other parameters as well. The next one is, do you want it anti-aliased? And because it's kind of a pixel type game, like real low resolution, I'm going to put false on that. I don't want anti-aliasing on it. The next is, what color do you want the font? So I'm going to do self.color, and we'll actually, did I import? No, we'll do this. We'll make self.color equals, and for right now, I'll make it white, but we can adjust this later. And then the final one is, do you want it to have a background? So we're gonna put none, because I want it to be transparent. So that'll generate the image for us. Then we also need the rectangular attributes, so self.rect equals pygame.image.getRect. And then I want to set its x to the width of the display. And if I do this, it's going to put it all the way off the display, because remember, an image's origin point is the top left. So I need to subtract the width, and then I also want to give it some padding. So let's subtract like 20. So that should put it right on the right and give it a little bit padding, so it's not actually touching the edge. And then self.rect.y, I want it to be at the bottom, so we'll do display height minus self.rect.height, and we'll give it some padding, and again we'll tweak this number, so I'll do like 50. And that should be it for that. And we'll do update. And on its update function, I'm gonna pass for right now. Think of the best way to do this. I'm gonna make another method called update score, and it takes a value because it needs to know like how much do you want to update it by. So we'll do self.value plus equals the value that's passed in, and then since we've updated the value, we kind of need to redo all this up here to generate a new image and maintain the rect and y, rect.x and rect.y values. So let's go ahead and paste all that down here. I don't need to redefine the color. I don't need to redefine the font object. We just need to get a new image. So that's what that will do. Once we got the new image, because the score's changing and different characters of the font are different sizes, and if we add an extra character, like if it goes from 1 digit to 2 digits, the rectangular attributes are going to change. So every time we adjust the score and recreate the image, we have to re-get the rectangular attributes and reassign it back to the correct place. That should be that. We're probably not going to need anything in the update method. We still need to have it though, because every sprite should have an update method. So let's go to our HUD, because we're going to add it to the HUD. So HUD.py, and let's put it right here. From score import score. We'll do self.score equals a score object, and self.score group. I know I'm making a lot of groups, and this really isn't the best way to go about doing this, but it's a basic tutorial, so it's very easy to do it this way. But again, in the more advanced tutorial I'll do later, we'll actually come up with a really nice way to handle all this. It's just kind of hard to explain in a basic tutorial. So we have a score group, which is going to equal pygame.sprite.group and self.score group.add the score to it. All right, and self.score group. We'll run its update method during the entire HUD's update method, and then we'll go back to main, and it's going to be below the icons technically. There's not really going to be an icon that's drawn over it, but it technically is, in my head, below the layer of the icons. So player.hud.scoregroup.draw to the display. I don't know if this will crash right now. Yeah, it crashed. I just wanted to test to see if it worked. So line 14 and score, there's an error. I did pygame.image. I meant to do self.image.getRect. All right, so see, it's drawing the score right there. I actually want to make the font bigger, and I want to lower it because it's actually not in the HUD. So for score, let's go back in there. And another thing, these padding numbers, like when we use these for the health bar and the heart icon, it was kind of fine to hard code them because we're only really ever using them in one spot. But as you see, I'm having to re-update the rectangular attributes on the update score, and I'm having to write them twice. So I'm going to make two variables right here. I'm going to call it x pad equals 20 and y padding for like padding, so we can use those variables. So I'm going to clear these out and type in our variable names. And do it again here. That way I don't have to update it in so many areas. I can just update it in one area. So the X looked like it was fine, but the Y padding looked like it was too high up. So I'm gonna put it at like 25. Let's check that out. Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly where I want it. All right, but I want the font a little bit bigger. So font size, we can just go here and make it like 24. Perfect. Yeah, that'll work. That's perfect. But now we need to get it to update. So in order to update, we just need to call this function somewhere and pass a value into it. So it would be every time you hit an enemy. So every time an enemy, this is our collision check right here for enemies and bullets. So if they collide, you can just do player.hud.score.update score. And how much do we want to update it by? One thing we could do is we could make the enemy object have an attribute called points, and every enemy we kind of make an object for, we can give it different point values, whether it's a boss or a harder enemy. And that way, every enemy we collide with, we can pass in its score amount in here. So let's go ahead and do that, actually. We'll go to our enemy class and just make a variable called point value, and we'll make it 5. We only have one enemy right now, but we'll make it 5. Now let's go back to main, where we can check our collision, and where we run the player HUD score update score method, we can pass in enemy 0, because that's the current enemy it's grabbed, dot score value. We'll pass that in. Let's see if this works. And we got a crash. Let's see what's going on. Enemy object has no attribute score value. Is that not what did I call it point value? I called it point value. Let's call it score value. All right, I got another error. PyGame image. Oh, I did PyGame image again. So line 26 on the score object. Let's go back in there. I don't know why I did these pygame.image.getRex. It's self. You're getting the rectangular image of the object itself. So now let's try it. Hopefully no more errors. Yeah, it's working now. There we go. See, we get 3 points every time we actually shoot them. And it works. Yeah, cool. Sorry. I don't know why those particles when you shoot, it feels so good. It's pretty cool. Okay, so yeah, that's how we add a score to our game. And doing it this way, we can always pass. Whenever we collide with an enemy, we just actually pass their own point value in here, and every enemy can have their different amount of points they grant the player when they get hit. All right, so I'll see you guys in the next video.